Earlier, Ted mentioned the game Age of Steam, and people are creating add-ons to the game itself. Here we got J.C. Lawrence. He's got his own add-ons to the Age of Steam. One called London, and the other one called the Sun. And he's going to explain about how to play these two games, or how the add-ons work, and also about the rules of Age of Steam. J.C., how did you come up with the idea of creating the add-ons? What kind of creative process did you come up with?
That's rather a long tangled tale, I'm afraid. The original map, or the original game, came with this map here, which is centered around the Great Lakes in America. And after that, the original publishers then came out with a series of additional maps, each of which were set around different parts of the world. The first one is Ireland and the south of England. They also did Korea and Scandinavia and Germany and France and Italy and so forth. So and each one of them takes the basic ideas in the original game and extends it in a variety of directions, changing core rules, changing the balance points, and so on, and essentially making a different game, which is still related to the original game. So a number of us started latching onto this idea and saying, well, what can we do that's new, that's different, that's original, and somehow interesting? And so I came in and I started designing maps along with Ted Alspach and a few others, and these two are now being published by Ted with his Bessire Games company.
All right, thank you. Could you also explain the rules of the game itself?
When Age of Steam was originally published, it came with a Great Lakes map, which is seen here. These are the two maps which I'm publishing with Bessire Games, which is Ted Alspach's game company. What I'm going to explain now are the basic patterns of the game of Age of Steam. And essentially, what we're dealing with is that each player in the game runs their own train company. And what they will do is they will build track across a landscape, here or there. And yes, the Sun doesn't exactly have landscape, but we'll deal with that. And then they are arranged to deliver things to make money. The things to deliver are represented by these cubes. In the beginning of the game, a variety of these cubes will be scattered out across these colored hexes. And the colored hexes are cities and named as cities. For instance, here for the Great Lakes map, we have Cincinnati and Detroit and Chicago and St. Louis, all identified on this map. Now the basic pattern here is very simple. If, say, there's a blue cube here, it wants to go to a blue city. It wants to go here, or here, or here, or actually all the way up here. And if you deliver that cube to that city over the track you build, you make money. Now, to make the game a little bit more challenging, what Age of Steam embodies is a fairly aggressive financial engine. And the pattern is actually quite simple and yet brutal. You start out in debt. Every turn you have to make payments on that debt. The only way you have of getting money is to borrow more money. Of course, means that your debt payments are larger. So what you do is you borrow more money, which are actually in the form of shares that you issue. And there's a little track here that tracks how many shares you've issued. And you have to pay dividends on those shares as the game progresses, which are the debt payments. But by making these deliveries of cubes, you get income, which is recorded around the outside of the track here. And eventually, towards the end of the game, you'll start making more money than you have to spend in maintenance and dividends and so on your train company. At that point, the game will end. Usually. Sometimes it goes a couple more turns. In the production of these two games, we consolidated the tracks from the original game, which are these relatively boring things, into this more colorful and communicative version. But let's look a little bit at the patterns here. Let's say that we started out with a cube arrangement, something like, say this. Now, it comes to my turn. The very first thing I'm going to want to do on my turn, let's say I'm the first player, is I'm going to want to build some track. So what I might do, for instance, is I might say I'm going to build some track here, connecting this city to this city, and then connecting this blue city down to the red city here, like so. And to signify that I built this track and I own them, I will place markers on them in my color. And there are different markers in the different player colors. Then later in the game, I might deliver this red cube from here over this link and over this link to this red city. And that would get me 2 income. then went over 2 linked segments. We would record that by moving the income marker up to 2, and every turn from now on I'll make $2. However, to do this, I have to have a train which is long enough to go that far. Over here, we have recorded how strong my train is, how far it can go. It starts off only able to go 1 space. So it can go from here to here, which isn't good enough. The cube doesn't get there. I could move the blue one to here and get 1 income. That would work. But if I pay the money and do the necessary actions to increase my length to 2, I can start delivering reds. Maybe there's more than 1 of them to here, and get upgrades of 2 every time, and that way make lots more money. This is a very aggressive game. It's a very competitive game. The players are continuously in each other's back pockets. They all want the same things. They're all fighting over the same cube deliveries. They're all fighting over to build tracks to connect things that they want to connect and get the money that they need to survive financially. There is an auction to control who goes first at each phase and who goes second and third and fourth. And so there is money in the game, which is represented by these coins. Being that this game is originally a British game, the goldish coins are pennies or singles, and the silver coins are 5s. And so we will bid money to determine the turn order. We will also spend money to build our track because it costs. And we will spend money to pay dividends on our shares, which are recorded here in the original game, or recorded on this long track here in my versions, and so forth. The general pattern for the early part of the game is that money just flows like water. You're continuously losing it, and you go deeper and deeper in debt. By the end of the game, if you have done well, you have built an extensive track network using these tiles. These ones, by the way, go on these towns. And you will be making deliveries for up to your maximum train length, which is 6. And so you will then suddenly start getting to be profitable. The game ends after a fixed number of turns. There is a pawn which moves and returns the total number of turns in the game. It's actually the wrong track, it's this track here. When the correct number of turns have been done, the game ends. At that point, there's a quick calculation based on how much money you have, or how much your income is, how many shares you've issued, and how much track you've built. A quick calculation with that set of values, and a winner is determined. Typically, games are very close. This is a game in which you really have to struggle to survive in the first place, and one of the better ways of struggling is to make sure that other people have a harder time than you do. I happen to also love this game. The primary changes that I made with Age of Steam London, which is this map, is I added this chart here, which increased the costs of track building rather extremely. I also changed some details of track building and the way cubes come onto the map so that more cubes may be delivered in the future. With this map here, which is Age of Steam Sun, I changed it a bit more severely. As you see, it's the sun, there are no towns. In the rules, there's actually a little story, a backstory saying how this works. We're actually energy miners on the sun. We are tapping the immense power of sunspots and the magnetic vortices that form sunspots, and using that energy to tap power from the sun and deliver it back to the teeming billions on Earth, because we're running out of energy. Apparently, we've decided to no longer use fossil fuels. Now, one of the amusing things that can happen on this map is that you can still build track to connect locations. But if, for instance, there were some blue cubes here, and you say, I'm going to deliver those blue cubes over to this blue city and make my money, it is possible for players to move the cities to different locations. Or thematically in this game, they're orbital stations, because they're power stations. And so your deliveries may disappear. This can be a pretty severe problem to your income perspective. So you need to carefully control the track you build and try and encourage other people to build track where you want them to, and not to fight over the same cubes and so on. This tends to be a relatively vicious game. As one of my playtesters characterized this one, he said, "This is four people crowded in a telephone booth. They're having a knife fight. It's very crowded and there's lots of blood." Because you have great opportunity in this game to carve up on each other. You're still going to get ahead, but nobody ever gets ahead by much because nobody will let you. And that is a very short description of Age of Steam.